Welcome back to Business 3040. This is Professor Herman again, of course. I am excited to announce the lecture for Chapter 1, which is going to start shortly. I broke it into two parts. The first part is just going to cover foundational definitions and concepts for the course. It's really going to help you parse out some of what some misconceptions and common usages that we want to be a little bit more precise around the terms, in particular morals versus ethics. That's going to be important to remember this semester. And the second part of the video, which will be just below this, I'm going to post. I talked about some of the reasons that you want to study ethics, and as well as some of the debate and discussion around whether it's more or less profitable for companies to behave more ethically than they're required to. And I think that's an interesting discussion that will also animate a lot of the rest of the semester. Before I let you get to the video, just a couple quick notes. The PowerPoint slides are also in this same page, so you should be able to find those pretty quickly. If you've not yet signed up for MindTap, go ahead and do that pretty quickly, please. We only have about 2/3 of the class having signed up for MindTap, and I'd like to get us closer to 100% at that point. To get there, in the course navigation on your left, just go to the modules and then click on the MindTap module, and then click on the link that takes you to MindTap, and then just follow the sign up process. It's pretty straightforward. Just make sure you're using your MSU Denver email address with Cengage, which is the company that hosts the MindTap platform. And then I'm also going to post a separate video in the course information page, which is all about how to set up email forwarding. If you're not using Outlook and the MSU Denver official email interface to check your email every day, you should forward your email address to something that you do check every day. It's important to be able to get your MSU Denver email. And finally, I've got a little bit of exciting information about some various C2 Hub events that I'm going to throw those in the announcement as well. So without further ado, here's the first part of the lecture from this week. Okay, awesome. So welcome everybody. I'm glad you're all here. Thank you so much for having your cameras on too. Like I said, I really like to, I think we're getting a lot more out of it if we get a chance to really feel like we're as present as possible with each other and being able to see each other. So I really appreciate you all helping with that. And we're gonna cover some of what I think are some of the more interesting parts and or the more important parts of Chapter 1 today, as well as a couple brief diversions into other stuff that I think is pretty interesting and relevant. In particular, there's a code of ethics I want to talk about just a little bit. So a quick check before we get too deep into this here. I want to test something. So you should all be seeing my slide deck now, right? Yes. Yes. Okay. So when I do this, you can see that. You can see the browser on top of that. Okay, great, cool. Because we're going to talk about that in a little bit, but we're going to obviously have to get there before we get there. So today we're going to talk about definitions. The textbook has some really important definitions that I really want to highlight. Now these are in the book. And like I said, I'm not going to try and hammer home the entire content of the textbook in lecture every day. But some of the fundamentals in this first chapter, particularly the definitions, are really worth just making extra sure we're all on the same page about. And this is going to be really essential for you to complete the higher level tasks that come later in the semester and successfully do that. A couple more folks to admit. Hey Charles, I'm going to make you a co-host. So if I snooze on admitting people, please I'll let them in. And then we're going to talk about why study business ethics. Some of this is in the book, but I also think some of what I have to say will also help you understand some of where I'm coming from for this semester. And finally, we're going to discuss the interrelationship between ethics and corporate social responsibility and profitability. I think there's a good case to be made that companies that are more ethical are more profitable or more sustainable or more likely to sort of stay around for the years to come. I think that's really important, but the record is unfortunately a little bit more mixed than the textbook lets on, and we'll talk about that as well. So first, let's discuss our definitions. And the book is really explicit about this. And a lot of you, when you joined this class and thought about business ethics, your first thought about ethics was probably much closer to morals. In ordinary language, in ordinary conversation, right, we might say that's not ethical or that's immoral, and use those synonymously. We might use those to mean the same thing. But this is really important. This is really important. And if you're taking notes, and you should be taking notes, you'll learn more if you take notes. If you're taking notes, underline this, highlight this, bold this. Morals and ethics are different concepts. Morals and ethics are different concepts. We're going to be talking about ethics this semester. We're going to be talking about how individual moral philosophy can inform ethical decisions. But we're not going to be talking about morals in the same way that we normally do in normal conversation and thinking about how should I organize my life, or what's important to me, or what's valuable to me. So when you think about morals, now this is not true for everybody. This is not true that not everyone buys into this specific moral code, but I think it's an excellent example of what I mean when I say morals and what the textbook means when the authors say morals. A good example of that is the Ten Commandments. Right, the Ten Commandments are a classical not ethical, sorry. Again, I do this too. It's a normal thing to conflate the two. The Ten Commandments are a classic moral code that determine how individuals should behave in relation to other individuals and in relation to God. Now, for those of you who may not have the largest screen or may not have the best ability to read what is going on here, I'll give you a few examples of what we mean when we say a few examples of the Ten Commandments. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image. Thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain. Remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. Honor thy father and thy mother, right? Those are the first 5 of 10. So in honoring parents and in keeping the Sabbath, those affect how we interact with other individuals, but they're just ways that guide our individual behavior in the ways that we interact with other individuals. And the first 3 are just how an individual under this code, whether you subscribe to it or not, that's just an example. The first 3 are an example of how one is expected to relate to God. Right. So this is what should I be like on an individual basis? These are the questions this coda asks and answers, is what should I as an individual behave like? And so it's between me and my parents, it's between me and the people. The only one that is work related is remember the Sabbath, right? The rest of them just interact with how I interact with people as individuals, though, right? Like, don't kill them, don't commit adultery, right? Don't steal from them, don't bear false witness against thy neighbor. These are the fence, unfortunately, is blocking number 10. I forget number 10. I do not know the Ten Commandments that well. But it's the relationship between yourself and other individuals and your relationship between you and God. That's what we mean when we talk about morals, as applicable if you believe in a God. Not everyone does, of course. And atheists are have quite valid and strong moral systems as well. So when we talk about values and principles, these also sometimes can be conflated with with morals and ethics, and these are yet other concepts. I'm going to let the book go into a little bit more detail on these, but just make sure we're all on the same page real quick. Values are enduring beliefs and ideals. They're societally enforced. Right. And I think that I think that it is important to remember that there's a lot of overlap between these concepts too, right? So some societies are very strongly, most societies are very have a more of a monogamy assumption and are very strongly against what we would call adultery. But some societies are perfectly okay with polyamory and or whatever other term or whatever set of relationships happen there and are non-monogamous, and then the other sets of terms too that are enforced there. And so the values can vary a lot from society to society. There are other examples where we're expected to in as you may remember from your business communication class, in Western cultures such as Western Europe, the United States, we're expected to be more candid to people when we give them feedback. And there's even some variation within these. So like Germans are a little bit less candid sometimes than Americans can be, but they're still pretty forthcoming. But you contrast that with East Asian cultures, and which are much more roundabout in their criticism and feedback, and would consider a lot of the ways that we give feedback to people very very indirect sort of feedback in comparison to the way that Western cultures do that. So the value in the West that's embodied in that is that we're candid, we lay everything on the table, we're very open, and then the even if that comes at the expense of relationship building and security within relationships. And the reverse values are true in cultures that are more roundabout with their criticism, where the relationship comes first, and then the performance specific feedback is a lower value, is less important. So value, the very important point about values that I'm getting at here is that they're culturally, socially determined in a way that's much more true than these other sorts of concepts, although the culture matters for all of them. But hard work is the example, is the primary example that's given in the book. And I think most cultures value hard work, but again, there are different value ratios, and some cultures value hard work more than others. Even within the United States, you really see this variation. One thing I like about Colorado versus New York, where I lived for 10 years, is that we value work probably a little bit less here in Colorado. We in turn value leisure a little bit more, and sort of work-life balance a little bit more in Colorado than is true in New York City. And I think that's more to my liking, and that's part of why I'm glad to be back here. When we talk about principles, we're talking about boundaries not to violate. So these are the sort of thou shalt nots of the workplace, the 10 commandments, if you will, of the workplace. And it's not that there are a clear 10 or what they mean. And they vary a lot from industry to industry as well. So for instance, if you're in sales, there are, you certainly can't lie about what a product can do or about its capabilities. But, depending on the incentive structure for commission and so on, there's no boundary or principle around sort of, I really think this. So like, imagine you're selling cars, and you really think that this other car is this minivan, let's say, is the best possible fit for a family that comes in, but the sales structure for you is for the wagon. Like, you make much more commission per dollars of sale because they're having trouble moving the wagons. They can't keep the minivans in stock. And so you say, well, I'm gonna show them the wagon first and really kind of emphasize that, because if I can get them to go with that, I'm gonna get more commission there. Obviously, if they say, show me the minivan, I'll take them and show them the minivan. But if they're like, I don't know what's good, then then as a salesperson, I'm gonna let that incentive structure push me over towards selling the wagon. I don't think that really violates any understood principles of the car lot. I think that's probably understood as well within the bounds of acceptable behavior. Whereas when it comes to financial services, For those of you who are finance majors, especially those of you who are thinking about becoming a certified financial planner and helping people identify financial products that are a good match for them, that kind of behavior for a CFP is probably starting to brush up against, if not violate, some of the principles that apply for that particular profession. So because you have, and I know they just turned this down from strict fiduciary responsibility to whatever the next tier is below that, but you basically have an obligation to do what's in the best interest of the client to the best of your ability in a way that is not really true on a car lot. And so these principles vary from industry to industry is what I'm getting at as well. But the whatever those hard lines are, you cannot do that. So I mean, like on a car lot, if a car has a 3-year 36,000-mile warranty and you tell a customer it has a 5-year 60,000-mile warranty, that's a pretty clear violation of a principle there. You can't lie to a customer like that. So we have all of these in every industry. It kind of varies by industry, and you're going to have to figure out what those are and wherever you wind up. Okay, so all of that is to say none of this stuff is exactly what we're talking about when we use the term ethics. So what do we mean when we say ethics? Right. Well, ethics are a set of
ideas that guide how you're supposed to behave in a professional context. Ethics are a set of guidelines that guide how you're supposed to behave in a professional context. Now, principles, the way I just laid them out and the way the book lays them out, that's included in this ethical structure, but it's much bigger and more all-inclusive than that. And to get a sense of what that looks like, I want to look in a little bit of detail at the Code of Ethics at SHRM, the Society for Human Resource Management. Now, for those of you who are management majors and aren't sure what to do with a management major, I know that happens for a lot of us. A lot of our students come in and they're like, I want to study business. And our advisors say, well, what do you mean? We have management, we have marketing, and a lot of you, by the way, said your major is business management or your major is business marketing. That is not the name of any of our majors. None of our majors start with the word business, except for business intelligence. If you're a business intelligence major, that's the name of that major. But if your major is management, on your resume, on cover letters, etc., identify your major as management. Just the one word, management. Does not have the word business in it. So this is something that constantly comes up. I'm constantly helping people prepare for stuff, and as folks who are going out identifying yourselves, you want to be as crisp and factual as possible. The name of the major is management. Now, for those of you who are a management major and aren't sure what to do with it, we have an excellent concentration within management that's the human resources management concentration. And if you like people, if you have a little bit of a desire to help people get as good as they can at their jobs, and you're looking for just some of the rock steadiest work you can get, our human resource management concentration within the management major is one of the best ways to do it that doesn't involve a lot of higher level math. I know that terrifies a lot of people, so I'm just going to put that out there explicitly. You guys still have to do all the same business core math stuff, so the analytics and finance and all that stuff. You still have to do that same stuff. But the human resource management concentration is much more about principles and guidelines and laws and stuff that shape how human resource decisions get made, as well as how do we coach and extract the best value and the best career productivity out of people. And there's a lot of demand for that work. And those folks and I know that especially in an environment like today, you're probably thinking, is this job pretty much recession proof? And the answer is yes, it's pretty much recession proof. I mean, the HR people and the accountants are pretty much the ones who turn out the lights on their way out the building. So as long as the business is still a going concern, they're going to need human resources professionals. And so it's a pretty good, safe career track for those of you who are kind of like, I'm not sure. I strongly recommend considering the human resource management track. And not only is it generally pretty good, we just got certified by the Society of Human Resource Management as meeting the educational requirement to get your SHRM certificate. And so there's some additional things involved above and beyond that. I'm not sure, I don't know what those are, but you don't have to go get a master's degree or anything on top of that. A bachelor's degree with the concentration in human resource management and our management degree is your educational credential to get the human resource, the SHRM certificate, which is a really desirable professional credential. So for those of you who are just kind of not sure what to do, that's one area to seriously consider as you enter the second half of your college career here with us. Okay, so when we talk about ethics, I think the SHRM Code of Ethics is a really excellent embodiment of what we mean by that. A set of core guidelines that tell you as a human resource management professional how you should behave. In your professional context. Now, there's nothing in here about graven images, right? And there's nothing in here about adultery. There's also very little in here about, principles that you're not supposed to violate, because it's kind of assumed that you're already, sort of not violating the law or violating company policy. It's a more sort of advanced sort of how do we do the right thing and do right by everybody in a professional context. So I'm gonna, like I said, I'm gonna pull this up and throw it on the screen since I know that works for everyone. Okay, so you can see this now, yes? Yes, excellent, thank you. So the code of ethics has several areas into which their principles and guidelines are set. And so I'm going to skim through so you see what those are. So the first is professional responsibility. The second is professional development. The third is ethical leadership. The fourth is fairness and justice. The fifth is conflicts of interest. And the sixth is use of information. And I think this is really a good example of an ethical framework, because you're going to understand really quickly why it's specific to human resource management professionals, right? And so the core principle, and here they're using the word principle differently than the textbook uses it. So for your quiz on chapter 1, keep in mind how the textbook uses the word principle, but the guiding philosophy is more how they mean it here. So the core, let's say, guiding philosophy of the professional responsibility part of the code is that as HR professionals, let me zoom in a little bit here. As HR professionals, we are responsible for adding value to the organizations we serve and contributing to the ethical success of those organizations. We accept professional responsibility for our individual decisions and actions. We are also advocates for the profession by engaging in activities that enhance its credibility and value, right? So as HR professionals, we're going to build ethical cultures within our organizations. And we're also going to behave ethically so that HR professionals generally have a good reputation. And so we as an HR professional, we're going to do everything we can to help the reputation of our company and help the reputation of the profession. Right, so the intent here is to build respect, credibility, and strategic importance for the HR profession within our organizations, the business community, and the communities in which we work, to assist the organizations we serve in achieving their objectives and goals, to inform and educate current and future practitioners, the organizations we serve, and the general public about principles and practices that help the profession. And so within the context, and so this kind of goes on, and then the guidelines, I think this is a lot of where the rubber meets the road. Adhere to the highest standards of ethical and professional behavior. Measure the effectiveness of HR in contributing to or organizing or achieving organizational goals. Comply with the law. Work consistent with the values of the profession. Strive to achieve the highest levels of service, performance, and social responsibility. Right? Advocate for the appropriate use and appreciation of human beings as employees, right? So this is something that we hope everyone in the building is doing, but this is especially important for HR professionals to do, which is why this is in this code of ethics. And so I'm going to scroll down a little bit here. The link is in the slide deck. I think this is important enough. I'm gonna put a link to it in as a separate item in the module as well, just to say, hey, make sure everyone goes and reads this. It is important. And then I like this area of fairness and justice. As human resource professionals, we are ethically responsible for promoting and fostering fairness and justice for all employees and their organizations. And the intent is to create and sustain an environment that encourages all individuals and in the organization to reach their fullest potential in a positive and productive manner. And so those guidelines include respect the uniqueness and intrinsic worth of every individual, treat people with dignity, respect, and compassion, right? Ensure that everyone has the opportunity to develop their skills and new competencies, and assure an environment of inclusiveness and a commitment to diversity in the organizations we serve. Develop, administer, and advocate policies and procedures that foster fair, consistent, and equitable treatment for all. So some of this stuff, some statement in this direction will often become part of broad corporate statements of values or broad corporate ethical statements. But the real drilling down here and focusing so much on the specifics here and so much on like, no, really, you own this. This is for HR people. This is your thing. You are responsible here at the bottom line. That really belongs in a code of ethics for human resource professionals in a way that it is nice to have, it's good to have, it's important to have for other corporations, but it's not as important if you're trying to look at the whole organization or the whole system. And less important, still important, but probably less important still if you're talking about a code of ethics for accounting, for instance. So. Again, I'm going to throw the link to this in the Canvas. It's already in the slide deck here, as you can see, and I'll throw the slide deck up on the Canvas after class here as well. So why study business ethics? Why study business ethics? Actually, here, let me just come back here and highlight. I just want to recap what we covered here, because this is it's just super important. And for the rest of the semester to make sense, it's going to be really important for you to understand this. You can, and really probably should, and almost certainly will, have moral beliefs that aren't really relevant to the job, that aren't really relevant to your profession. And that's good and fine. You need a moral code to guide how you're going to interact with your family, how you're going to interact with your friends, how you're going to interact with your neighbors and with your community. You need a moral code to decide how you're going to be able to be okay with yourself when you go to sleep at night. Right? That's not what business ethics is about. Business ethics is about setting up identifying a set of principles, not a set of principles, a set of guidelines that determine how you should and should not behave in the profession that you're in. So you as a realtor, as a real estate agent, might be, let's say you're a real estate agent and a radical environmentalist, right? So you think, 5-bedroom, 2,500 square foot homes with grass lawns are a monstrosity, and you don't believe in that and in your personal moral views. That's fine. That's great. But as a real estate agent, your responsibility is to the buyer or the seller, right? And so if they want to buy that house, if that's the house that they have to sell, your responsibility is to help them do that, because it would be unethical for you to impose your personal moral beliefs on the buyer or seller's decision making. They're in charge. And helping them and being their agent so that you can help them better affect their values and their moral priorities is your responsibility when you're at work. Now, 501, you punch out. Of course, we all know that's not how realtors live. Pity to the realtors. But when you punch out for the day, or it's you're taking the day off so that you can go downtown and protest and demand radical restrictions in water usage, rezoning so that we have much smaller lots and much denser populations, so that it takes fewer resources for us to live the way we live. Great, that's fine. If that's your moral code and how you want to live, and maybe you came to that because you saw all these 5-bedroom, 2,500, 3,500 square foot houses and green lawns and said, I don't really like what we're doing here. That's fine. But on the clock, while you're a realtor, you have to set those morals aside, because your ethical responsibility is to the buyer and the seller. Your ethical responsibility is to the buyer and to the seller. So that difference between ethics and morals, the ethics being professional and morals being personal, that's absolutely foundational to the class. And so I want you to walk away day one, really, because last Wednesday was just greetings. I want you to walk away from day one with that understanding.